I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle Now. Bill, there is a political activist on the campaign trail already for 2020 telling Americans that they should spend every breath that they have to stop the lies starting on January 21st, 2021, if I got that date correctly. I understand this activist said that Democrats have important debates over who their candidate should be, but they have to win. They have to win. That speech was delivered in an interview at the 92nd Street Y in New York during that interview with an MSNBC host called Nicole Wallace. And of course, the speaker was former FBI Director James Comey. So before I say anything else, let me just kind of get your initial reaction to hearing that from the now rather rapidly retired James Comey.
Yeah, it's a mystery why he was fired, you know. It's obviously a crime against the republic for the president to remove an impartial arbiter of justice like that, especially when he sits at the pleasure of the president. It's an absolute mystery.
Now, I'll be fair to him in a sense that I characterized him in that question, provocative though it was, as a political activist. But the quotations that I gave from him were accurate.
He is a political activist. When you read a 45-minute indictment of Hillary Clinton's crimes and then say, but no reasonable prosecutor would ever take the case, that's a political activist. And I don't know a lot of people in the FBI. I know one or two of them, and they were mortified, and they were as shocked and appalled as the rest of the country. Comey is probably the most prominent member of this cabal. Like I said, I'd never really believed in this whole deep state thing until I actually saw it in front of my eyes. But this is a man who's used the untouchables. Remember when they were the untouchables, the FBI? Remember when they were the uncorruptible source that you could always count on to be above, political influence or being bought? That's why they were called the untouchables.
Well,
That's
I remember
why
when they were portrayed that way in TV and movies, Bill. But in all fairness,
they were portrayed that way in TV and movies because when the FBI was created, it was not a local police force that was susceptible to these kind of Tammany Hall corruption things. And I would say as a general rule, although they've had some kind of screwy FBI directors, you could make the case that the FBI was at the very least not covering up evidence. You may say that they were going after targets of with a political lens. Okay, but they weren't burying evidence. They weren't suppressing evidence.
Well, I think, in fairness, Mr. Comey, when he was director of the FBI, did not bury or suppress evidence. He brought the evidence out, but then he just said he would not recommend prosecution. It was not in his hands to bring those charges. He was just supposed to investigate and present the evidence. It would have had to have been a prosecutor to bring that. Well,
then why, if it wasn't up to him to prosecute the case, then why would he say that I don't think any reasonable prosecutor would take the case? Why would he insert that? If his entire job was simply to do the investigation and come up with the facts which were damning, why would he suddenly put a bow around all of this and give his boss Loretta Lynch it out by saying, "But we don't think it's prosecutable. We don't think none of this stuff is prosecutable." When in point of fact, everything he said was prosecutable. If it turns out that it wasn't his call, then why insert that escape clause?
Well, ultimately, the people who did have the responsibility to do that, to bring charges, did not bring charges. And I don't think it was a throwaway phrase from James Comey about, I don't think any reasonable prosecutor would bring the case that kept them from doing that, is it?
It was covered, Scott. I mean, you've got this investigation, and the reason you have this investigation is because the crimes are so glaringly obvious that something has to be done. So when the FBI director comes in, like I said, basically reads a 40-minute indictment of all of the things that Hillary Clinton said that she didn't do but did. Was there classified information on the server? Hillary Clinton said no. Was there? Yes. And Trey Gowdy just put the pins in him again and again and again. Did she conduct, I forget what the term is, gross negligence? No, but she did conduct willful neglect or whatever. So you've got this FBI director listing the outcome of the investigation, which is absolutely damning, and then for him to add, "Well, I don't think any reasonable prosecutor would take the case," is not just an off-the-cuff remark, Scott. It is the get-out-of-jail-free card. It's the fig leaf for Loretta Lynch to be able to say, "Well, as the FBI director said, that we don't really think any of these charges are really too serious. Of course, he's a political activist. He might as well be Mao. He might as well be Bill Ayers. So he's certainly done a lot more damage than Bill Ayers.
So that same guy who brought this damning evidence against Hillary Clinton, no matter what happened after that fact, is now saying that President Trump is so untrustworthy. There are so many lies emanating from his mouth. He's not making specific charges against him, and he's also not saying, by the way, he's not calling for the impeachment of the president or the sort of abrupt removal from office. He's saying in 2020, Democrats need to come together around a candidate who can actually beat Donald Trump. So, Bill, if you believed James Comey when he was bringing charges or bringing accusations against Hillary Clinton, why don't you believe him now when he's bringing these kind of allegations of dishonesty against President Trump?
Oh, this is not the point. In fact, you've just made my point. If James Comey can overlook the overwhelming body of felonious evidence against Hillary Clinton, then he's certainly capable, and do that because of his political persuasions and his ties to the Clinton machine, which go back 20 years, that if he's capable of doing that, then he's certainly capable of talking about charges that don't exist. It is inconceivable to me that the Federal Bureau of Investigation could have been politicized as it's become. But as we've discussed before, if you really want to take over the government and really take it over for good, then all you really have to do, Scott, is you have to take over the Justice Department. It started with Eric Holder and then with Loretta Lynch. If you can take over the Justice Department, you can then basically say who gets prosecuted and who doesn't. And from the very beginning with Eric Holder, when it's like, what was it, where that case of Black Panther intimidation in the first year of Obama's administration.
In Philadelphia at the polling places?
Yeah, and he said, we're not going to prosecute our own people. Remember that?
James Comey was vetted at many stages of the process. He had to run the gauntlet of Congress. By all accounts, he was portrayed as being somewhat of a Boy Scout. He didn't hide the fact that Hillary Clinton had done things that he thought were unethical, in bad judgment. His case that he was making was basically that he doesn't think that it could lead to a prosecution. All that said, if you're a conservative, and the bedrock of that conservative ideology when it comes to justice has to do with law and order, we are a nation of laws, not of men, then if you start attacking the chief law enforcement officer of the country, and not the chief, the attorney general is the chief, but one of the leading law enforcement officers of the country, then how can you still stand up and say, yeah, I'm all for law and order when you're undercutting the very foundation of that idea?
I'm not the person that undercut the foundation, Scott. I'm the person pointing out the people that undercut the foundation. The Department of Justice, which the FBI falls under, has been a politically corrupt organization, at least since the beginning of the Obama administration, and not unintentionally. The Democrats, during the 8 years of Obama, governed this country as if they would never lose again because they never thought they would lose again. And the reason they didn't think they'd lose again is that when the cops are on your side and you're basically paying the cops and the media, how can you possibly lose? It would take a miracle for Hillary Clinton and the Democrats to lose that election in 2016. A miracle. There's no way it could happen. Not with the media and the FBI and the Department of Justice and the IRS and all of these other government agencies working for the Democrats. Couldn't happen. It's impossible. And then the American people, with some final spasm of like as the last kick of a dying animal almost, have the courage and the audacity to swim against this headwind, or swim against this stream rather, and the unthinkable happens. And now all of a sudden there's some exposure. Now all of a sudden there's at least the opportunity to do things like get rid of James Comey and all the rest of these guys, and what was his name, Struck, another one of these indistinguishable from communist agitators in the 1950s. And really, in terms of their attitude towards the government, indistinguishable. And these people and the other agent, and then what's her name, reality winner, making a personal decision about what she thinks about politics and therefore deciding to leak information and so on. How are you going to prosecute her? She did what? She's going to do a year? How do you possibly go after somebody low level, as low as reality winner, when the Secretary of State is basically putting every single document in the entire United States diplomatic corps out to dry in a bathroom in New York someplace? I mean, how are you supposed to reinstate the rule of law If these people upheld the rule of law, I wouldn't be having this problem. My entire problem is the fact that first of all, the media is supposed to be the immune system for a republic, and they're supposed to seek out corruption and graft, which is not unique to Democrats. Like Republicans are just as capable of being criminal jackasses as any other politician. But when the body's immune system decides which diseases are going to flourish and which diseases are going to be fought, and then on top of it, when the actual policemen, the white blood cells that come and actually destroy the pathogens after the immune system's identified them, when the policeman comes along and says, yeah, no question that's a cancer cell, all right, but I don't know, no reasonable white blood cell would attack that cancer cell. And it's like, what the hell do you expect to happen?
The kind of situation you're describing actually flies in the face of your previous metric that you use to evaluate conspiracy theories. In this case, we have a theory
way?
Because what you have said in the past is that you got to watch out for the kind of conspiracies that involve so many people not breaking faith with the conspiracy,
right,
that it strains credulity. And
right.
here you're not just saying that James Comey is corrupt. You're saying that there's a whole chain of people, all of whom supported James Comey, and essentially nobody broke with him in that process of acquitting Hillary Clinton keeping her free from charges.
Nice try, but the entire idea of a conspiracy is that things happen below the surface, that there are things operating below the visible level that affect the outcome, and this is why I'm so hesitant to believe in conspiracy theories. It's not conspiracy theory to look at Loretta Lynch. Now listen, Scott, if I were to tell you, if you had only heard this from me, if I were to tell you that the Attorney General of the United States met with the former president, who is the wife of the former Secretary of State, who's under investigation for criminal charges, and if I had told you that those two people met on an airplane for half an hour and I didn't have any evidence of this, then you can start barking at me about me being a conspiracy nut. But when it's reported everywhere and everybody knows it and they have the audacity to do it in front of our noses, it's not a conspiracy. Look, it's not a conspiracy theory. It's a conspiracy. You've got the Attorney General, you've got the Director of the FBI who serves the Attorney General, and you've got the President, and you've got the former Secretary of State. And if you really want to know the very simple answer why none of this really went down, is because every single one of those classified emails that Hillary Clinton got on her server, she knew they were classified, and a significant number of them must have come from the President of the United States. So there it is. It's not hidden. It's not secret. It's not my idea. I didn't come up with it. It's not Alex Jones. It is an absolute proven fact with videotape evidence that Loretta Lynch met with Bill Clinton on an airplane. And when she came out of that meeting, she had the audacity to turn to us. So we know, no, we didn't talk about the investigation. No, a little chat about our grandchildren. Really. It's like Michael Jackson telling you he's never had any facial surgery.
So final question along this line, and this is from the political perspective of it all. No matter what you think about James Comey, the entire country isn't behind you yet. There are still a lot of people out there who see him as a law and order man, a Boy Scout, a upstanding guy. It doesn't seem unreasonable, Bill, to assume that this guy's going to be the keynote speaker at the next Democratic National Convention while they're nominating their nominee. And he is going to stand up there and say, I know President Trump. I've met privately with President Trump. I headed the FBI. The FBI knows things that I can't even tell you about President Trump. I am saying, do not vote for this man. Get out there and fight to elect your Democratic candidate.
Well, then where's your bleeping evidence, Comey? You've just listed, as we've said, for 45 minutes, you've listed a series of felonious lies that Hillary Clinton committed. Now, if you want to stand in front of the DNC and make the keynote speech and talk about all these crimes that Donald Trump has committed, where is your frickin' evidence? Where is it? We've been waiting for it for 2 years. We haven't seen any of it. And as Mueller's case continues to fall apart, this becomes more and more evidence, more and more actual evidence that there is a political cabal in Washington that is determined to make sure that the American people will never, ever, 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 ever again have the opportunity to disagree with the choices made by these people in Washington, D.C. The nerve.
And Comey is not saying, remember, Comey's not saying prosecute him. So he's not doing anything differently than he would do with Hillary Clinton. He's not saying prosecute him. He's not saying impeach him.
Hold on.
He's saying vote him out
No. There's
of
a big
office.
difference. There's a big difference between what Comey's doing with Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. With Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Comey is making vague allegations and saying you need to vote Democrat. He's making vague allegations about the legal trustworthiness of the president, so vote Democrat. But with Hillary Clinton, he wasn't making vague allegations. He was listing a series of felonious behaviors in sequence that were directly contradicted by Hillary Clinton under oath. And so while what he's doing with Trump is simply making an allegation, what he did with Hillary Clinton was making a clear-cut evidential case of her misbehavior, and then to simply say, oh, well, on the other hand, we probably wouldn't prosecute this. Scott, this thing comes down to something very, very simple. Everybody thinks that you have to, in order for this charges to stick to Hillary Clinton, you have to prove all of this stuff. No, there are two statutes at stake here, two that matter. One of them says that if you are an employee of the government, at the end of your term, any official documents must be returned to the United States government. She clearly did not do that. There were any numbers, even if it's an email addressed to the Secretary of State about her yoga schedule, she didn't turn it in. So that is a violation. It's a felony, and it carries a charge, I think, of 1 to 3 years in prison. And furthermore, if you found to have tampered with any records of the United States government, like using like wiping it with a cloth, if you're going to use bit bleach on a computer that has United States documents on it, then that is a tampering with the documents felony. It's a second felony. It's a second charge, and it is further specifically punishable by not holding any position in the United States government ever again. Now, I'm not talking about gigantic laws, and I'm not talking about uranium deals to Russia or anything. It's right there. It's in the legislation. It's crystal clear. Any number of little people have been prosecuted on those points before because of security violations, and rightfully so. And basically, the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, working for the Attorney General of the United States, understand that their guy was involved in this goat rodeo, the biggest security lapse in the history of the country, where the President of the United States is emailing the Secretary of State of the United States with classified documents that are going to a bathroom server in an apartment in New York, apparently, and parenthetically, some 100,000s of them end up on the personal laptop of a known pedophile who's under investigation for sexual allegation charges. So if I came to you with this story and you'd never heard any of it before, you'd look at me and say I was barking mad, and I would agree with you 100%. But since none of them are under discussion in terms of the actuality of them, when WikiLeaks leaks the fact that the DNC is sending people to Trump rallies to start fights in order to make the Trump people look violent, the response of the DNC and the people involved and Podesta was not, it's not true, because they know it's true. They've got the evidence. It was, how did you get that information? Never once was it, no, it didn't happen. Never once when Donna Brazile was accused of giving debate questions to Hillary Clinton, never once did she say, I didn't do it, because obviously she did it. There's the frickin' evidence. All she could say was, well, if you're gonna live in a world where the press can simply take somebody's personal email. Okay, I get it. So I know you've been going to Herculean efforts to play devil's advocate, and that's why this show is a show and why it works. But nothing you said is holding any water at all, other than to further clarify the fact that there is and was and continues to be to some degree, but was certainly a criminal cabal of people who were breaking federal regulations, felonious regulations, on a regular basis in order to gain political power, period.
Well, I think some of our viewers are going to need some of that bit bleach to get the picture of Hillary Clinton in Lululemon pants doing downward dog at her yoga class out of their minds. This is going to be a painful experience.
As if Hillary Clinton could do yoga. There's your evidence.
Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you tuning in 5 days a week to Bill Whittle Now, as we bring the breaking stories of the day in under the harsh light of experience, of history, of principle, and of truth. We are grateful for the supporters at BillWhittle.com, those citizen producers who are members there who have made this possible. You can join their ranks by going to BillWhittle.com and clicking that subscribe link. So for Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this possible.